Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. Germany opposes Ukraine's plans to join the EU next year. More on that in a moment, but first let's take a look at tonight's headlines. The US is on the brink of another armed conflict with Iran. The decline of the rule of law and violence against journalists in Serbia. And a growing number of Poles are satisfied with the country's economy. It's impossible, says German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, dashing Ukraine's hopes of joining the EU early 2027. The announcement comes a day after Ukraine's president stated his country would be ready within the next 12 months. Aaron Damon reports.
A hammer blow to Ukraine's hopes of fast-tracking its accession to the European Union.
We discussed this in great detail in December and 3 weeks ago in Paris. And we also told the United States that Ukraine joining on January 1st, 2027 is out of the question. It's impossible.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz ruling out the war-torn country joining the bloc as early as next year.
All members, including Ukraine, who later joined the European Union, must meet the criteria. That process usually takes several years.
Merz's remarks come just a day after Vladimir Zelensky himself insisted Kyiv could be ready to go within the next 12 months.
Ukraine's accession to the European Union is one of the key security guarantees not only for us, but also for all of Europe. That is why we are speaking about a concrete date, 2027. And we count on partners' support for our position.
Ukraine first applied for EU membership shortly after Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022 and has been pushing for a trimmed-down timeline ever since as part of potential security guarantees. In fact, speaking exclusively to TVP World last year, EU Commissioner for Enlargement Marta Kos made it clear that Kyiv was top of her agenda.
I am your biggest supporter and I will stay your biggest supporter, and helping Ukraine becoming a member of the EU is the most important task I have as a commissioner for enlargement.
But despite Kos reportedly adding this week that it was her desire and that of many member states to see Ukraine as part of the bloc by 2027, she says reforms and the EU's fundamental principles must come first. Those comments hinting at Ukraine's own political troubles at home in recent months, including a rule of law saga that has spanned ministerial corruption and kickback schemes. The will they, won't they debate over fast-tracked accession sits in the backdrop of a renewed push for peace, with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio confident that there is just one last sticking point between Ukraine and Russia.
And that is a territorial claim on Donetsk in particular. And I know there's active work going to try to see if both sides' views on that can't be reconciled. It's still a bridge we haven't crossed.
One round of trilateral talks between representatives of Ukraine, Russia and the United States have already wrapped up in the Middle East, with another bound for this Sunday. Even so, Russia's Vladimir Putin, who was visited on Thursday by his counterpart from the United Arab Emirates, has repeatedly demanded Kremlin control of the Donbas, something Kyiv is refusing to buckle on.
This is very, first of all, difficult and no-go, dead-end discussions about this concession of Donbas. And also, I think legally it's also almost impossible. I don't think that Russians except military, they will get anything of these territories, because most of these territories basically burned. No people, no buildings, nothing. It's just a burned land.
All this as President Zelensky again warns European leaders of what's at stake, telling them to take the threat of Russia seriously, not just to Ukraine, but to the continent at large.
We all see that the forces trying to destroy Europe do not face a single day. They operate freely, even operate inside Europe.
A sober reminder in Davos that the threat of Moscow will not go away anytime soon. Aaron Darman, TVP World.
US President Donald Trump said on Thursday that Vladimir Putin agreed to hold attacks in Ukraine cities for a week. due to cold weather. After a series of Russian strikes on civilian infrastructure, hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians were left without electricity and heating. Our correspondent in Kyiv, Oskar Turgi, reports.
Temperatures in Ukraine briefly rose to above freezing late this week, providing some small respite for Ukrainians who have been living through Ukraine's coldest winter in decades. But there is currently no end in sight for the state of emergency in Ukraine's energy sector, as Russia continues to target Ukrainian power plants, cutting off power and central heating for as much as 80% of the Ukrainian population. The winter cold, combined with a lack of power and heating, has already led to at least one fatality, with Novaya Gazeta reporting that elderly Kyiv resident and Holocaust survivor Yevhenia Besfarmini was found frozen to death in her apartment in mid-January, as the Ukrainian capital was experiencing minus 18 degrees Celsius weather. Ukrainian authorities, working round the clock to restore the power grid, have also suffered losses, as 4 energy repair workers have lost their lives in January while on call. Responding to the crisis, Ukraine's allies have stepped up support to Kyiv in recent weeks. A Polish government initiative to supply Ukraine with hundreds of power generators donated from Poland's strategic reserve has just completed another delivery to the Ukrainian capital, with the shipment being unveiled in Kyiv by Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Oleksiy Kuleba and the Polish ambassador to Ukraine, Piotr Łukasiewicz.
There is 90 generators being donated by the city of Warsaw to the city of Kyiv.
Support has also been pledged from other European Union countries, including France and Italy, to help Ukraine deal with the deteriorating humanitarian situation. Temperatures expected to stay well below freezing throughout February. These generators could not have come at a more critical time for Ukraine. I'm Oskar Turgi, reporting from Kyiv for TVP World.
Estonia is concerned that Russian war veterans, many of them former convicts, could flood Europe once the war in Ukraine is over. Will the EU ban them from entering the bloc? Our Europe correspondent Alex Kadir reports from Brussels.
Well, it's a proposal driven by Estonia, the Estonian foreign minister warning that there could be a flood of ex-Russian servicemen coming to the European Union if a peace deal in Ukraine is reached. And that is very much why Estonia and other member states are now seeing the value, of course, in an EU-wide ban for ex-combatants. We heard Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, talking about Russian war crimes, talking about that proposed ban and saying this.
The proposal was made and many member states around the table supported this. Because if you look how many ex-combatants are there compared to the war in Afghanistan, for example, so there are a lot of them, and it poses a clear security risk to Europe.
So, of course, now that there is political will and it is a decision that has to be made by majority and not unanimity, the question will be looking at exactly how this ban can be rolled out. They are looking at the moment, we understand from EU officials, at about 500,000 ex-Russian soldiers who would have to be put on a list for this ban, coordinating with the member states to make sure they do not get in to the European Union. Now, of course, there is support among the member states to roll this out. The how will need to be figured out, but it has to be said that a lot of people behind the scenes wondering why this hasn't been put in place already. In Brussels, I'm Alex Kadir for TVP World.
Tensions concerning Iran have risen precipitously as the US threatens use of military force. Tehran has been warned if it doesn't strike a deal regarding its nuclear program, the US will have to take charge. Iran's regime responded similarly, issuing its own threats as the EU added to the fire by heaping new sanctions on the Islamic Republic. Kazimierz Wysiak has the following report.
This massive US aircraft carrier has recently joined the armada of other ships near Iran. It's part of a robust military build-up in the region, as US President Donald Trump says to the Iranian regime, make a deal or else.
Hopefully, Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons, one that is good for all parties. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal.
But the regime shows no intention of backing down. Iran's mission to the UN has responded with threats of its own.
Last time the US blundered into wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, it squandered over $7 trillion and lost more than 7,000 American lives. Iran stands ready for dialogue based on mutual respect and interests. But if pushed, it will defend itself and respond like never before.
As tensions flare up, the European Union has announced new sanctions on members of the Islamic Republic responsible for the deadly crackdowns on protesters earlier this month.
We are putting new sanctions on the list, and I also expect that we agree on listing the Iran Revolutionary Guard on the terrorist list. This will put them on the same footing with Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Daesh. If you act as a terrorist, you should also be treated as terrorists.
All eyes are now on the US president. Will he give the green light for an attack on Iran? He did it before with strikes on the country's nuclear facilities last year. This time around, though, he has more things to consider. Oil is one of them.
The country who is incredibly rich in resources. It has the second largest deposits of oil, gas.
But there is yet another consideration: the people of Iran. The data on the number of demonstrators killed by the Ayatollahs, difficult to pinpoint due to the information blackout, ranges from 5 to 30,000. I spoke to an Iranian living in Poland who was there in the middle of the protests. She paints a picture of nightmarish scenes on the streets of Tehran.
Something changed. We saw those bullets were real and people were bleeding, falling down, dying, bodies on top of bodies. All the street was full of blood.
For the people of Iran, the US strikes could be the final push they need to topple the regime, or a beginning of another lengthy conflict, with them caught in the crossfire. For TVP World, Kazimierz Łysiak.
Can racist remarks by one of Hungary's ruling party ministers dash Viktor Orban's prospects for re-election? The leader of the TISA party is eager to exploit the situation, thus boosting his chances for a parliamentary win this April. Andrew Sweeney reports.
If there are no migrants and someone has to clean the toilet on the intercity train, the internal reserve is the gypsy population of Hungary.
Could these anti-Roma remarks by senior Fidesz minister throw a wrench into Viktor Orban's re-election campaign as Prime Minister? Opposition leader Peter Magyar thinks so. He's taken to the campaign trail to meet members of a Hungarian Roma community.
We will deliver János Lazar's message to Roma people on loudspeakers and flyers to 1,000 small settlements. Help us so that everyone finds out what Orban and his people really think of Roma.
I think he can use this to a maximum effect, because he can bring this message to also small villages where the support for Fidesz has been extremely strong, and he can broadcast this very clear message of disdain towards the Roma.
The LGBT community in Hungary has also been targeted by Fidesz's ministers. Budapest's mayor, Gergely Karacsony, was arrested for organising a banned Pride March last year. However, in stark comparison to the Roma community and its alienation, LGBT issues are absent from Magyar and his TISA party's campaigning.
They are very, very consciously avoiding talking about LGBTQI issues. So that was the case when the Pride ban was introduced.
With 73 days left before the elections, Fidesz hopes to avoid further gaffes from its ministers that provide opportunities for Magyar. For TVP World, Andrew Sweeney.
Serbia's judiciary reforms serve as a serious step back, says EU's Enlargement Commissioner Maria Kos. A deteriorating rule of law is not the only accusation Serbia faces these days, as vast numbers of journalists have been physically assaulted since the beginning of anti-government protests last year. Our Balkans correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski has this report.
Death threats, physical violence and destruction of equipment amid police negligence. This is what journalists in Serbia are confronted with when they attempt to cover anti-government protests, according to the latest UN report. The violence has been attributed to Serbian authorities as well. There have been reports of police brutality, use of spyware and arbitrary arrests. In November, TVP World spoke to Relia Jarkovački, who, while photographing protests, experienced the authorities' aggression firsthand by being hit with tear gas.
Which was really strong, really powerful. It knocked me out, and it was even, I had the feeling from it even a couple of days later. And the only thing you think about while you're trying to document it is why this much.
But freedom of expression isn't the only thing under attack in Serbia these days. On Wednesday, a highly controversial set of amendments to judicial laws was passed, reversing changes made in the last couple of years. As part of Serbia's EU membership bid, the country decided to
separate actually executive from the judiciary, because traditionally, as a former communist country, we had this really developed this concept of unity of power.
Now these controversial changes are considered a major step back in the European integration process and prompted immediate criticism from the EU.
The vote of Serbia's parliament to limit the independence of the judiciary is a serious step back on Serbia's EU path. At a time of great progress for enlargement, when Montenegro and Albania are moving fast, Serbia risks taking the opposite direction. This is not what we want.
But at the moment, when it comes to wants, a quick integration into the EU might be far from what the ruling Serbian Progressive Party and President Aleksandar Vučić desire, feeling pressure from anti-government protests that have continued for almost a year and a half now. Serbia's ruling party braces itself for snap elections this year, a decisive vote that might end their perpetual rule. Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
37% of Poles are happy with the state of the country's economy, a new survey shows. With forecasts indicating a 4% growth in GDP this year, there's likely to be an increase in the number of those satisfied with Poland's economy. Maciej Wilowski reports.
As economic growth accelerates and inflation subsides, consumer confidence in Poland is rising. That's the result of the latest survey published by the Public Opinion Research Center, or CEBOS, a research institute based here in Warsaw. According to the survey, the share of Poles rating the economy positively rose to 37%, 3 percentage points higher than December. At the same time, the share with a negative view fell 1 percentage point to 26%. But a sizable share of respondents, just over a third of the total, had a neutral opinion, saying the economy felt neither good nor bad. To get a sense of the mood in Warsaw, we asked people on the street how they felt about the economy.
Our situation, economic situation, is fantastic because we are the leading country now in Europe. We just became one of the 20th biggest economy in the world.
I don't know. I normally don't keep up with these things. People are not going hungry, they're dressed well, so it's probably not that bad.
Rising confidence is backed up by data showing the Polish economy outperforming. Real gross domestic product, a measure of the value of goods and services produced in the economy, rose 3.8% from a year earlier in the third quarter of 2025, the latest period for which data is available. PKO Bank, Poland's second biggest lender by assets, projects the Polish economy will grow 4% this year. That's above the central bank's projection for 3.7% growth. At the same time, the rate of inflation, typically one of consumers' biggest worries, halved over the course of 2025. And Poland's currency, the zloty, is strengthening, with consumers and wage earners poised to benefit.
What we are seeing here is a massive reflation in the value of Polish assets and in the value of Polish wages and incomes.
And if the Polish economy keeps up this momentum, consumer confidence could be headed for new multi-year highs. Reporting for TVP World, I'm Maciej Wilowski.
Germany says a firm no to Ukraine joining the EU in 2027. What is Ukraine's reaction? And what should we expect from the next round of negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow? To talk about it and more, we're joined by Ukrainian MP and the Voice Party leader, Kira Rudik. Good afternoon. Good evening.
Hello, Maciej, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. Let's start with Donald Trump's words. Today he said that he asked Vladimir Putin not to attack Ukraine for this for a whole week as temperatures drop extremely low. Now, would a week, if indeed this happens, would a week be enough to restore heating and electricity and water to those who need it?
The truth is we do not know. Of course, our energy system is known to hang by a thread, and our energy services are trying to do their best to really have a chance of people to have heating and electricity. We still have hundreds of homes in Kyiv who are without heating since the recent day attack. However, we will see. We have heard many assurances from President Trump and many good calls with Putin that he had, and that didn't result in anything good for Ukraine. So let's see how we survive those next couple of days. It will be indeed very hard temperature-wise. The cold spat is coming up. And one thing is, I hope our military do not trust Putin and are ready to take down any drone or missile that's coming our way, because from what we have seen in the past, it could be a strategy. Hope that we will relax and then attack us at the weakest point at the darkest hour.
Let's get back to the very beginning of what I said. Germany says a firm no to Ukraine joining the EU in 2027. How would you comment on German Chancellor's words?
Of course, the decision to accept Ukraine into European Union is a political one and a part of negotiations with the coalition of the willing. President Zelensky announced that we need a date because we know that Europe does not have a cohesive decision on accepting Ukraine. For example, we still have Hungary, we have Slovakia, and there could be other countries that would say firm no. We understand that the process of integration is a really long one, and Ukraine has done so many things really by the book to move in this accession process. So I understand that this process is complicated, and what President Zelensky perhaps wants just some assurances that at some point Ukraine will be in European Union and it wouldn't take decades as for other countries that are also candidates.
What do you expect from this next round of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine? It's due to begin this Sunday.
We are very worried that the United States seems not to be participating in this next round of negotiations. It seems that they are backing off, and it's not a good sign. Again, given that we know that Russia has no intention to stop right now, they just have intention to drag on the negotiations to escape sanctions that President Trump promised to impose if they will not agree to negotiate. So they negotiate, and would there be a result? I guess by Sunday at least we will see if Russia will commit to the word that President Trump gave to not to attack our energy infrastructure. But again, I'm not very hopeful because we do not see any real incentive for Putin to stop right now. He has his winter campaign going. He is escaping sanctions successfully. Europe is still discussing on how to act on him and still have time till 2027 to ban Russian gas. So, why to stop now?
Marco Rubio, to be precise here, said that although the top American negotiators, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, are not joining the talks, there might be someone from the American side to help in negotiations. Ukraine's foreign minister, Andriy Sybiha, stated yesterday that, let me quote, the most sensitive issues are still unresolved territories and future control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The president is ready to meet with Putin to discuss these issues and resolve them. Where and when would President Zelensky meet with Vladimir Putin? Because the Russians say that he can come to Moscow, where he would be provided with safety and all the means to work. That is President Zelensky indeed planning a trip to Moscow?
Oh, I'm sure we all understand that Putin just dreams to repeat President Trump's success with Maduro and show the world that he is also a great leader, which he is obviously not. I'm sure it's not in Ukraine's interest at all for President Zelensky to go to Moscow. There are so many other places in the world that will ensure the security. Again, the question is, could these negotiations between Ukrainian president and Russian dictator really end the war and really end up the question about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear station and territories that Russia is demanding? I seriously doubt that. Russia understands the only language, the language of force, the language of power. We have been saying it since the day one. We have been proving it with the facts. And if you look even at the last 4 years of Ukraine fighting, there has not been any time when something else miraculously worked with Russia. Only the force, only the ability to fight back, what was supporting Ukraine in negotiations, what was allowing our ships to actually go in and trade in the Black Sea, that allowed us to regain some of our territories. Unfortunately, it was not diplomacy. It was strength that we gained with the support of our partners. So right now, the recipe for ending the war is very simple. Weaken Russia, support and strengthen Ukraine. I do not believe that Russia intends to keep any of the word that they may be giving and that they have any intention of ending the war. We see absolutely no sign on the ground of that.
And yet it seems that it's the US who pushes for territorial concessions in Ukraine. Now, what would Russia need to offer in return for Ukraine to cede the Donbas region?
Maciej, it's not about territories. It's not about the land. Same is it not about the land for Russia. They have enough land. They have huge territories. It's about people. We have people living there. How can we sacrifice some of our people so other people can live in some illusion of peace? It's just impossible. It's not that you can offer something. It's impossible on the human level, not even on a political one. I do not think that there are any politicians in Ukraine that want to go in history for conceding some lands to our enemy. I don't think that President Zelensky is that politician. I don't think people in the parliament, members of parliament, are doing that. But more than that is we are fighting, and Russia was not able to take those territories. So why should we give it up? That's the question, not rather than what Russia can offer for it.
So we have a stalemate. Nothing changes.
No, it's not a stalemate. We are trying to get stronger. We are working with our partners on increasing the defense spending, on strengthening Ukraine. We have heard the European Union imposing more sanctions. Some of them will work in 2027, and we hope to survive by that moment. There is not another nation in the world that wants peace more than Ukraine, but it's not at any cost, and it's obviously not by capitulating to Russia and giving them something that they are not able to take by force. So we are fighting. We have lost so many people in this cruel war. We have so many people suffering right now when we are speaking, and it's not to go and capitulate tomorrow.
Kira Rudik, Ukrainian MP and the Voice Party leader, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more news and interviews here on TVP World.